Incredibly, the sculpture of Yehuda Maccabi, the hero of the Chanukah miracle, can be found, a sculpture, at West Point Military Academy, America's most famous and this tremendous internationally famed academy for the study of military defense and warfare. Yehuda Maccabi appears as part of known as the 9 Worthies, a sculpture of 9 characters of antiquity, mostly kings and princes, with the exception of Yehuda Maccabi. And why is it that it is Yehuda Maccabi who is there to be studied by every American officer, yet he is glaringly missing from the oral Torah and the customs that we do on Chanukah? Indeed, throughout the 8 days of Chanukah, we will light candles, and we will thank God for the miracles, but not much emphasis is put at all on the military victories. 8 incredible military victories of the house of the Chashmona'im, Yehuda Maccabi and his brothers, which brought about the miracle of Chanukah and the rededication of the temple and the reinstating, as the Rambam says, for almost 200 years of Jewish statehood. In the Mishnah, there is no Masechet Chanukah. It is totally missing. Only sporadic mentions without its own tractate in the Mishnah. And in the Gemara, where the miracle is mentioned, the miracle of the military victory, the few against many, is underplayed, and the lighting of the Chanukah candles is emphasized. Why is that the case? You see, explains Rabbi Reuven Margaliot, one of the great rabbinic Talmidei Chachamim and researchers in the modern era, that it seems at the time of the writing of the Mishnah of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, we had very deep relationships with Antoninus, Marcus Aurelius, and with his great wisdom and diplomacy, was able to etch out a future for the Jewish people. This was only tens of years after the failed Bar Kochba rebellion, which caused so much difficulty for the Jewish people, this failed rebellion. And it seems, says Rav Margaliot, that in the new era, where it was absolutely clear now that there would be no Jewish sovereignty for a while, unfortunately, it was not only the destruction of the temple, which had taken place more than 100 years before Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wrote the Mishnah, but also in the 40 or 50 years before, the failed rebellion of Bar Kochba, which really irked the Romans and left so much death and destruction and cemented the exile of the Jewish people. Now, perhaps it was a new era, an era of the sages, an era of statelessness, where it needed wisdom, diplomacy, and community building, as opposed to statesmanship, the army, and the military. And hence, the written Torah about the battles of Israel for Jewish statehood, there's so much about statesmanship and military necessity, less so in exile. But now that we live in the era of independent state of Israel, where the Jewish people have returned to Jewish sovereignty, and now, unfortunately, have to fight for our existence, we see today how, only 80 years ago in the Shoah, the Jewish people were hated for being powerless, der Judah, and now we are hated for being powerful, the Zio, the yellow star to the blue star, the yellow star of statelessness and powerlessness to the blue star of having a state, statesmanship, and of power, the ability for the Jewish people to have a state of their own and to defend ourselves. It is the time now to reclaim both Yehuda Maccabi, Yoshua ben Nun, David HaMelech, all three who appear as part of the 9 Worthies at West Point, of people of Hashra, of inspiration, but also the great sages of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi Akiva, Abaye and Rava, Ravina, Ravashi. There is no contradiction. At a time when we had a state, and thank God today have a state, the inspirational figures of David the king and the military leader Yehoshua, Yehuda Maccabi, are people to draw inspiration from. And also, not only throughout the last 2,000 years, but forever, the great wise saints and scholars, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, and many others who wrote the Mishnah, known as Safra and Cipher, the sword and the book, the saint, the scholars, and the soldiers, all together, defending the values that we're able to defend when we have a state, and using diplomacy and wisdom when we don't. There is no contradiction between the two. Both need to be reclaimed. You see, I was in Poland recently, and there going to the villages of Tikuchin, Lupuchowa Forest, Jedwabne, where so many Jews, up to 1,500, were either burned to death or shot to death. And I thought to myself, this is a similar amount that happened on October 7th, where our son Daniel and many others paid the ultimate price. 1,250 people killed and murdered, and another 250 taken hostage. 1,500 people's lives who were altered. And as painful as it was, and it is so painful, we live for the results of that pain. The difference is that the terrible pogrom, which have made it the worst of the Nazis happy on October 7th, stopped after 8 hours. We are blessed to live in an era where the enemies of the Jewish people are unable to do pogrom after pogrom, which happened 1,000-fold during the 6 years of the Shoah, but one terrible pogrom. But because we have a state and an army and can draw inspiration from not only from Yehuda HaNasi, but also from Yehuda Maccabi, Safra v'Saifa, the wisdom, the saintliness, and the ability to defend ourselves with an army we are blessed to have in our era. Please God, may we be able to draw on the tremendous inspiration of the lights of Chanukah, the wisdom, the Torah wisdom, and our ruach and strength which comes from our values, but also in the great courageousness of Yehuda Maccabi and his brothers, who without their courageousness, without them standing up and putting their finger into the dike, without them standing up courageously to face the enemy, we wouldn't be here today. It is both the spirit and the physical prowess. It is both defending our values physically and drawing inspiration from our spirit, which enables us to live freely with the state of Israel today. And we hope and pray for the safety of all Jews in Israel and all Jewish communities around the world.